Hi, this is Bill. I'm the salty old Marine. I want to talk about why VA disability claims get denied. There are several reasons why a claim would get denied, and very often they're the same reasons over and over again. So let's talk about some of them so that perhaps you can avoid them, and also if your claim does get denied, you'll be able to fix them with an appeal. So let's dive in. One of the main reasons why a VA disability would get denied would be lack of a medical diagnosis. So let's say, for example, that you suffer from migraines and that you believe your migraines were caused by your time in the military. So you file a disability claim for migraines. Now, you know whether or not you have migraines. Anybody who's got migraines knows that they have migraines. The symptoms are classic, and it's a very, very severe headache that anybody who has one knows that they have it. Unfortunately, that's not going to be good enough for the VA. You can't self-diagnose, not in that case. So the VA needs to see something from a medical professional saying that you have migraines. That's a diagnosis. And it also needs to be fairly recent, like say within a year. So you need a doctor's statement from within a year that says you have migraines. That's a current diagnosis. If you don't have it in your claim may be denied. Now, let's say you submit without a current diagnosis. Chances are pretty high that the VA is going to send you for what's called a compensation and pension exam, a C&P exam. Not everybody gets them, but almost everybody does. So you go to the C&P exam. That's going to be with a medical professional. They will make a diagnosis as part of what they submit to the VA. The problem, my friend, is that you don't get to see it. Whatever they decide, whether they decide you do have migraines or whether they decide you do not have migraines, it's between them and the VA. You don't get to see it. You can't influence it. You can tell that doctor all about your migraines and they may agree with you, or they may not. So you're rolling the dice. Therefore, it's important that you get a current medical diagnosis of whatever it is that you're claiming. You say you've got migraines, you say you've got IBS, you say you've got this or that. Show me. That's what the VA is going to say. So that is a medical diagnosis. Next, service connection. Now, service connection is the first pillar of a VA disability claim. In other words, having migraines, well, I'm sorry you have migraines, but you'll have to tell the VA how that's related to your time in the military. That is the service connection or the in-service event. It could also be a secondary condition. So, for example, if you are already service-connected for one thing and you believe it connects to the thing you're claiming now, that's called a secondary condition, then you'll need to prove that connection, right? That's where we often see references to things like nexus letters or an independent medical opinion, right, an IMO. So you basically get your doctor or a medical professional, in some cases you have to pay them to do this, but they will examine your records, they'll talk to you, perhaps they'll give you a physical examination, and they will make that connection. So they'll say it is at least as likely as not that the current condition, remember we said you have to have a current diagnosis, is connected to something that happened to you while you were in service, either originally in service or as a secondary condition, like, for example, connecting a migraine to PTSD that you are already rated for. Okay, so lack of service connection or lack of nexus is one of the common reasons why claims get denied. Missing evidence is another reason why claims often get denied. So if you're being treated by the VA, then VA Disability has the ability to read those medical records from your VA healthcare system. If you have private health care, right, and you have records, you can either fill out a form and give the VA permission to ask your doctor for those records, or you can simply provide those records. You can give them to your VSO if you're using your VSO to file a claim. You can mail them in if you're doing it by mail. You can upload them to the portal where your claim is on va.gov if you're doing it that way. But one way or another, the VA has to have access to the records that prove all of these things that you're claiming, right? So sometimes claims get denied for missing evidence. Also, we talked about C&P exams, and it's important to understand that your C&P exam is critically important, but you're not in control of it. Now, you can help by being prepared when you go into your C&P exam and speaking directly to your symptoms and explaining how it affects your life and all of those things, right? But ultimately, the C&P examiner is going to say what the C&P examiner is going to say. They're going to fill out a DBQ, a disability benefits questionnaire, and they're going to write a nexus letter, which is that statement where they say it's at least as likely as not that your condition is service-related or related to a condition that you're already service-connected for. They may say it's less likely than not, and if that happens, your claim may be denied. Now, bad C&P exams happen, and sometimes they happen for the wrong reasons. Sometimes the C&P examiner is wrong. That's why we have an appeal system. So don't freak out if your claim gets denied. You have the ability to file an appeal, and if you do it within a year, you'll actually preserve your original claim date. So it's not the end of the road if you get a denial, and it turns out that the C&P examiner simply said they don't believe you. They don't think this is related to a service-related condition. So it's not the end of the world if you get a bad C&P exam. Of course, it's not fun. It's a terrible thing, but it does happen. Okay, sometimes we fill out the wrong forms. Sometimes claims get denied because we failed to fill out the form that was important for whatever the particular thing that we're submitting is. It's a labyrinth. It's very complicated, but if you're careful and you read, you'll understand what each form is for and make sure that you submit the right forms. Now, if your claim denial says it was the wrong form, then fill out the right form and send it in as a supplemental. We'll get it straightened out, right? Finally, sometimes claims get not denied, but you get a much lower rating than you thought you were going to get. For example, you might get a 0% rating. Here's an example. Under the current rules, if you have tinnitus, the constant ringing in the ears, right, and you go into your C&P exam, and you tell the audiologist, well, I have ringing in my ears, and it's related to my time in service. I served on a flight line, and it was really loud with the jet engines all the time. That should be sufficient to submit your claim for tinnitus. But, and this is very important, if you tell the audiologist that your tinnitus comes and goes and that sometimes you don't have tinnitus, that's enough for a service connection with 0%. So you get your claim back and it says, yes, you are service connected for tinnitus, and you get nothing, 0%. You're probably going to be upset. You're probably going to wonder why. After all, you have tinnitus, and the VA agrees that you have tinnitus, and the VA agrees that that tinnitus was caused by your time in service. Why 0%? The reason in this case is because you did not read the 38 CFR. 38 CFR. I'll put a link in the description. 38 CFR would have told you that in order to get 10% for tinnitus, which, by the way, is the highest rating you can get, you have to have constant ringing in the ears. And you told the C&P examiner it comes and goes. It was intermittent. Intermittent tinnitus gets a 0% rating. So, in this case, because you failed to read the 38 CFR and to understand how the symptoms are rated, that's what you got. Again, you can fix that. You can file a supplemental. You can include information from a private audiologist, and you can tell that private audiologist, if it's truthful, that your tinnitus is constant. Sure, sometimes you don't pay attention to it. Sometimes you can tune it out, but it's always there. There's your 10%, and now you've fixed your claim. So, we've talked about why VA disability claims get denied, right? Lack of current condition, lack of in-service event, lack of a nexus between the two, bad C&P exam, or you simply didn't understand what the rating system was, and therefore you got a much lower rating than you thought you deserved. Maybe you got a lower rating than you actually do deserve, which can be fixed. I hope you found this helpful. Again, as I said in one of my recent videos, always read your claim letter, whether you were improved, denied, whether you got what you expected or you got less than you expected. Read the claim letter. Read it one end to the other. It's a large thing. It's I don't know, 10, 11, 12 pages, and a lot of it is boilerplate, but it contains all of the information you need to know. It contains how you can go about filing a appeal. There's 3 different ways you can do it. We put that in another video. It talks about the fact that you've got a year from the date of the claim letter to appeal, and it talks about why you got the rating you got, or didn't get the rating you thought you should have gotten. And it will say very explicitly why that happened. You need to read that and then understand what it is you can do to fix it. I hope you found this video helpful. My name's Bill. I am the Salty Old Marine. Please like, share, subscribe, tell a friend, hire a skywriter, do all the stuff, right? Press the buttons. Help me out here. I'm getting the word out to all of our fellow veterans. And as always, have a great day.